I went and picked a lady up one time, 3 a.m. in the morning. She'd been nausea vomiting for 7 days. I've been sick for 7 days. And I was like, oh, it was 3 a.m. in the morning. I was being that cranky paramedic that I was being an asshole.
Yeah.
I was. And I was like, oh, you've been sick for 7 days. Oh, okay, sure, 7 days. Me and my partner, we stood her up. We walked her out to the ambulance. She was leaned over, dry heaving. Sat her down, I started a line, I gave her like 8 Zofran. I was like, you're never gonna be nauseous again. And brought her to the hospital and she was, same thing, just, oh, I'm just so sick, I'm so nauseous, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And I treated her bad. And I know I didn't do anything wrong, I didn't do anything bad, but I wasn't nice to her, you know what I mean? I wasn't nice about it at all. I was mad, I didn't want to be awake. I dropped her off to the nurse, I gave her a scathing review. I was like, this lady's nausea vomiting times 7 days or whatever. And it turned out it wasn't nausea vomiting, for no reason or whatever. She had had a cerebellar stroke 7 days ago, and her cerebellum was completely dead. So she was never going to have any balance. She was going to have nausea vomiting until they did some sort of surgical intervention, I'm assuming. And I think about, that was probably 6 years ago. And I think about that every time I start to try to be an asshole to people. I'm like, just because you don't know what's wrong with them doesn't mean that there's nothing wrong with them.
This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent, but this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
Welcome, everybody, to A Silent War Within. We are extremely excited to have our guest today. He's not only somebody who I've known for some years and really have looked up to some of his ways that he does things, and he and I had a very long conversation over lunch one day, and I told him he was a excellent communicator. So that's one of the things we're going to focus on today. As always, I keep saying we, but it's just me today. Michaela, our co-host, couldn't be here, so it's just me. Sorry to disappoint, but as always, I always start off telling you where you can find us. You can find us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all those good places. Our stuff streams on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that. So this is Trae Stine. Trae, how are you?
I'm doing well, buddy. How are you?
Good, good. So tell us about you. Tell us about where you're from. Tell us what your job title is, where you work, all that good stuff.
I'm a firefighter paramedic. I did everything backwards. Most people join the fire service and then find out they're going to have to be a paramedic to make more money. I did it the other way around. I became a paramedic. Then I joined the fire service. Then I found out that firefighting was probably the most fun thing in the entire world. And so I became a paramedic I graduated in December of 2016. Started working in March of 2017. Did however many years at Horn Lake Fire, which was a absolutely wonderful spot to work. And then about 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago, I moved up to Memphis Fire. So now I'm a firefighter paramedic for the Memphis Fire Department.
Awesome. So what was the draw? What drew you into EMS, and then what drew you into the fire service once you got into EMS?
That's it's always the same question. And I think me and I'd say like 75% of the rest of the profession all have the same answer. Nobody picked it to begin with. Everybody kind of fell into it after the fact. Most of us went out in the world and tried to see where we fit in. And after we failed at a couple things here and there, we finally stumbled onto this, and it ended up being way more than we thought it was. Me personally, I got fired from a job that I really loved, working at a restaurant. I was like 24, 25. I didn't have any direction in life, no idea what I wanted to do, no idea where I wanted to fit in. Actually, a good buddy of mine from Olive Branch Fire, he suggested, he was like, hey man, why don't you go be a paramedic? It's a great job. He said, they'll pay you $50,000 a year. All you got to do is show up. You work a third of the year. That's it. I was like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. I'll look at it. I'll see what I see. And then, of course, the career path is EMT basic for a semester. And then I went through Northwest Community College, which was a 1.5-year program at the time. And I got into it. just like a lot of other people in the area, my EMT instructor was KK.
Oh yeah.
She really sells it. And I was probably like a week in, and I was like, is this the best profession known to man? I was like, I think I'm going to do this forever. This is great. And then I got into paramedic, and I was like, this is even better. And then, yeah, you know, I'm going to apologize to your viewers ahead of time. So I'm going to be long-winded about everything. Anybody who knows me knows that I like to talk, like to hear my own voice.
That's
So,
totally okay. It's basically a talk show, so that works out.
So, one of the things that I love about this job that spoke to me was everything else I tried. I went to the University of Memphis. I was going to be a chemistry major. That was boring. Was really boring. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. And then I ended up failing out of there. And then I went back to Northwest a second time. I was going to be a public relations major. Everybody was like, "Oh, you'll be great at that." And it turns out that's not what I thought it was either. That was no fun either. But when I found this is the first time I found something that I would go to school and I actually enjoyed what I was learning. I enjoyed every aspect of it. I enjoyed learning. There's so much stuff to learn on the scientific side of stuff, and then you got to couple it with all these, like communication skills, and then you bring all that together and you go out on your first clinical ride and you realize that you don't know anything. You're like, "Oh, I learned everything in school," and then you
No,
start
you
talking to
didn't.
patients, and you're like, "Oh, this is way harder."
Yeah, that's not in the textbook.
It's not in any of the
It's
textbooks.
not in any of the textbooks. I had a problem with conversating with people, believe it or not. When I first started, I had very poor patient communication. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to talk to people in that setting. I knew how to talk to people, but I had never just showed up at somebody's house, the stranger that's here to pick you up. When you say it like that, it sounds weird, but that's basically what we are. We're just showing up at strangers' houses and walking in on what is some of their worst days in their mind and going, "Hey, my name's Kevin. How are you?"
Yeah,
Not great. I had to call you.
that's exactly what it is, and
Yeah. Yeah.
like learning how to, learning
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff was really cool. I enjoyed the scientific side of like learning, pathophysiology and learning all the drugs and learning all the cardiac rhythms and all that stuff. And then learning how to, couple that. And then I think another big draw to this job is, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm sure you have, but more than our fair share of people in this business are, ADHD or like mild autism
Oh.
or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call it. And I think there's a big draw to this job because of that, because of the, the ever-changing atmosphere and even if you run the same call 10 times, there's different aspects of it. You can run the same
Absolutely.
call on the same person, same time of day and have, two very different outcomes based on how you handle it, and I think
And
I
that's
think there's a big draw to that.
And that's one of the things that Shade Tree Cardiology talked about when he was on our show. He's ADHD, and he said, "This is the perfect job for me." The whole time I was doing it, he said, "I just loved it because it was something different all the time. My mind stayed busy the whole time." He said it really filled in the gaps for me. And he was an excellent guest to have on. So what about the fire service? Where did that transition happen? What did you see that was like, "Oh, this is really cool. I want to do that"?
So journey back. So I did this backwards. Just to remind
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
else gets into the business and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to be a fireman." And then after they're a fireman, they're like, "Oh, well, they're making me go through EMT." And then they go through EMT and they're like, "Well, if I do paramedic, it's only another year or so and I'll make more money." I didn't know how the business worked. I didn't know anything about it. I've never been in the fire service. I'm the first person in my family to ever join fire service or emergency services or any of that stuff. So it didn't make any sense to me to get a job for a profession that I didn't have the license in, right? So everybody I talked to all the way through EMT, all the way through all my clinicals, they were like, "Dude, why don't you apply? And then you can, be here working as an EMT. And then when you get your paramedic, it'll work." And for some reason I probably had 50 people tell me that. And I was like, "Well, I'm not trying to be an EMT. I'm trying to be a paramedic." I was like, I can't get hired, like they can't hire me as an EMT if I'm going to be a paramedic. Hindsight being what it is, now I understand
Yeah.
the concept, but at the
Yeah.
time it didn't make any sense. So I went through all the way through EMT. I was working at a farm supply store, uh, which was a good time, by the way. Working at a farm supply store, went all the way through EMT, all the way through paramedic school. And then when I finished paramedic school, I went to, I live in DeSoto County, so I went to all the major departments in DeSoto County. That's Olive Branch, South Haven, Horn
Hmm.
Lake, and Hernando. And I put applications into all those. Um, Hernando never called me back, which is fine. South Haven called me back. I went and did their physical agility test, and I sat one interview. Olive Branch called me back after I got hired, but Horn Lake called me and they were like, "Hey, we'd like to do an interview." Anybody who lives or works in this area knows that of those four major departments, Horn Lake is you go, and if they like you, they hire you. That's just how it is. They always, they're always a little bit short because that's the rougher side of town. So people like to get hired over there, work a little while, and then move to one of the other departments.
Yeah.
Every interview that I sat, I told the chief that I was looking at, I was like, "Hey, look, I'm fresh. I don't know what I'm doing. If you hire me, I'll work 5 years minimum before I even think about going anywhere else to do anything." And I told Chief Linville that over at Horn Lake, and he called me the next day and was like, "Hey, man, if you can work Monday, we're going to get it going." I was like, "That sounds great. I'll see you Monday." I was like, "What time?" He said, 7 a.m. I was like, "Oh, okay, 7 a.m.
That's hilarious. So you never worked as an EMT?
I never worked as an EMT. I never worked as a paramedic either until the day I got hired. I did my clinicals as an EMT, and then I did my clinicals as a paramedic, and then my first day on the ambulance was my first day as a paramedic. And my poor, sweet paramedic partner they started me with, I have apologized to her since, but like day one I showed up, registered paramedic. She was like, "All right, you know how to do this?" And I was like, "I've never even seen that before. What is that?" She was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "I've never seen that. Oh, what is that?" Like, I remember our first day, I don't know how I managed to get all the way through paramedic school, but our first day we went to a respiratory distress, a very easy call, a nice old lady with COPD who was having trouble breathing. And we did the albuterol, and my paramedic partner handed me a Solumedrol. I was like, "Here's a Solumedrol." I was like, "That's cool." She was like, can you draw it up?" I was like, "I've never seen whatever this is." I was like, "I don't even know." I was like, "Why is there solid? How do you get the solid out?" She was like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "I don't know what this is." So she had to teach me she had to teach me everything. And then when she got sick of teaching me, they put me with, I'm going to drop his name because everybody in this county will know him, but they put me with Eric Hughes, who was an EMT. He was an EMT at the time, but he was still a better paramedic than I've ever been. He's still a better paramedic than I've ever been. And we rode together for about 6 months, and he taught me the ropes, taught me everything I needed to know. Thank goodness for him. But yeah, I had to learn everything. The first time I picked up a febrile seizure, a little seizure, I was, I was panicking because I didn't know what I was doing. We put her in the back. We put her in the back of the ambulance, and I leaned through and I talked to my paramedic part. I was like, "Hey, what do I do if she seizes again?" And she was like, "Give her some Versed." I was like, "How much?" She's like, "You're supposed to know that." I didn't know anything. I was so green. I didn't know anything about anything. But on the plus side, I think that was a benefit over time because all the stuff that I got to learn not only in a emergency setting, but I also got to learn it when it was actually only me, when it was, up to me to do it. So everything got learned the first time. And I was like, I never want to feel that stupid ever again. So I would go back and I would, study exactly what I was trying to learn and get a handle on it. I'd say, all right, next time this happens, I'm going to do the right thing. And
Has your opinion changed when you orient people now about having the time versus coming straight in?
Yes, I counsel people to do the same thing that I was reluctant to do in the first time. I always tell people, I'm like, although most everybody, now that I'm at Memphis, pretty much everybody that I precept is either going through the Memphis paramedic program, Dyersburg, or Southwest, and almost all of them are already on the job or they're private service ambulance. So like, I don't think I've ever had a straight, like off the streets paramedic student since I've been at Memphis.
You're probably one of the few that I've heard that took that route. It's usually
I don't know if you've ever read David Goggins' book, but on the first page, he says, "Hey, this is what I did, but don't do it." If I were to write a book, it would say the same thing and say, "Hey, this is what I did, but don't do it. It sucks."
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll feel real stupid for a long time.
So I guess the next thing, of course, you know what our podcast is about. When did you start understanding that this job took an emotional toll on you? Or when did you start going, man, some of the stuff we see is really heavy?
So during that first couple months where I had no idea what I was doing, I ran a call to a local lumber store, and they had They had a 19-year-old guy. I'm not going to get real gruesome with anything, I promise. I'm going to try my best. But just to tell you the story, they had a 19-year-old guy that was on his, I think he was on his second day from a temp agency. So a temp agency sent this young kid over there to work at this lumber company. And somehow a couple 1,000 pounds worth of uncut cypress boards fell off and landed on him and just crushed this guy. We show up. As I've told you, I had no idea what I was doing. I was less than no help. I was probably a hindrance on this call, but luckily there were 2 skilled paramedics there that knew what they were doing. And there was, like they did everything that could be done, but there wasn't anything to be done for that gentleman. I still remember that being one of the first like graphic calls that I ran. And what I remember most about it was when we finally got him to the hospital. It wasn't so much him, accidents happen. You can rationalize that in your head, like, could he have not been standing there? Yeah. Could the boards have been secured better? Yeah. But accidents happen. That's why they're called accidents. But I remember the emotional part of it hitting me was while we were at the emergency room waiting, his wife and his 2 young children showed up, and they're just, his wife is distraught. His 2 young children are too young to understand it. So like, I just remember seeing them, and it becomes more real when there's family involved, As far as like the emotional toll of stuff, I would say that the profession in and of itself kind of dulls that fact for you, because like if you're the only one there that's like, man, that was kind of messed up, it feels strange. And most of the other guys around you, they don't really mention it, they don't really talk about it. Everybody tells you, they're like, oh, this job will make you hard, this job will make you tough. You won't feel all this stuff. And I think there is something to that over time. So when you show up, you're faking it, right? Like it bothers you.
Mm-hmm.
But because everybody else is being tough, you're like, well, I guess I better be tough too. And then through that process over time, what I've noticed is the emotional toll kind of gets spread out among the whole group of people. And then because there were more people that lived through that same thing that you lived through, and you guys have the chance to sit around, you have the chance to discuss it. A year later, you can say, hey, you remember that time this happened? And we're all like, oh yeah, that was wild. That was crazy. I think in some instances that might bother some people. Some people don't want to relive experiences, but in our specific profession, I think being around people that were there and experienced it with you and being able to talk about it, I think that makes a huge deal. As far as how the emotional toll like hit me, again, I'm sorry, I'm gonna tell long stories for the rest of this day.
I love it.
But I remember the first time that I was like, oh, okay, that's new, was backstory. I grew up on a cattle farm. We farmed cattle my whole life. We had horses my whole life. This is going somewhere, by the way. Animals, like we used to, I've never had any problem like putting down animals, you know what I mean? Like, especially animals that were hurt, animals that were sick, animals that we didn't like, pest animals, raccoons, various barn cats we had too many of, stuff like that. Well, I remember about a year or 2 after I started work for the fire service, we had a barn cat at my parents' house, and she gave birth to a bunch of kittens in my car that was in the garage. Not mad about it, just happened. And she ended up going septic and dying after that birth. And I went in the garage because I could hear those little kittens, meowing. And of the 5 that she had, there were 2 that were still alive. And I remembered in my head thinking, oh, man, probably need to kill these 1-day-old kittens, like they're not going to make it. It's going to be a lot of work, like you should probably just either just walk away and let them die or kill them and put them out of their misery, either way. And man, like I just, I've been doing that my whole life. I've been doing that in 25 plus years. And something about that time, I was like, I can't do it, I was not able to do it. I ended up putting them in a box and warming them up and giving them milk. I ended up getting on Facebook and being like, hey, can anybody take these kittens, please?
So you think that reaction was directly related to what you've been doing and how it had emotionally affected you?
I do. Like you see enough, senseless death or senseless violence and all that stuff. You're like, I just don't want to add to that. I saw a post the other day by, it was like unknown Ukrainian soldier or whatever. but it was saying it's the little things that change and you come back from war. And he was talking about he doesn't kill spiders anymore in his home, right? He's like, when I see spiders, I pick them up and I take them outside, and it drives my wife crazy. But, when you think about it, like the worst thing the spider's done all day long was be seen by me. Does that really is that really worth killing him over when I could just pick him up and I could take him outside? And that's kind of how I feel about it. Like I don't really, that's the best description I can give for it is like the little things. You're just like, well, I could let this, I could let this spider, die, or I could let this mouse drown in this, bowl that it fell into, or I could get a piece of wood, could pick him up.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting. That's the first time that I've heard that since we've been doing the show. And I think that's a very interesting point to explore a little bit, because I think we do that. I think that we do see enough senseless death that we're like, it's not a big deal. We can just get rid of the spider. And that seems mundane and very small, but in the grand scheme of things, like, we start to think of ourselves as the lifesavers is so overused, but protectors of life, kind of.
Yep.
And
that's
we don't want to take any more of it.
Yeah, the soldier who posted that at the bottom of it, he was like, I see myself in the spider. And I was like, I don't see myself in these, small animals or anything like that. But I do see, other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you ever notice this? And you kind of hit on it a little bit with that story, but there was kind of an internal shift in your mindset. Did you ever see it with you, with your irritability, or you got more emotionally numb? You mentioned that as well. Did you have changes in your humor? I've not seen changes in your humor. I've only seen your humor exponentiate over the years.
No, I'm lucky or blessed, or I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm a psychopath inside. I have no idea. But like I said, I'll touch on. So there are, like I said earlier, you can rationalize anything if you try hard enough, but as far as accidents go, any kind of accidents, drownings, falls, you can rationalize accidents because they are car accidents that kill people. Like, should they have probably not been drinking? Yeah. Should they have probably not been driving? Yeah. But in the grand scheme of things, do people drive home drunk all the time? They do. So, I mean, it's not like they drove home drunk on purpose and hit a bridge. They might have. That's on them. If that's what they wanted to do, that's on them. I'm not justifying that. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. But I'm saying is it's an accident. Accidents happen. There's, we can I can prevent accidents here at my home. I can prevent accidents with myself. If you've ever gotten stuck behind me on the highway, I drive 65 miles an hour. That's my top speed. That's the fastest I'm going anywhere I go.
We would not be friends if we ever rode together. I could not.
A lot of people. I used to drive, when I would drive to Horn Lake, I would get 2 or 3 calls every morning from different people that were going to the same work that I go to. And they'd be like, man, is something broken? Why are you going so slow? Like, I go this slow every morning. And I got a habit. They would call me every morning, like, just past you see, buddy. But that's as fast as I want to go because 1, I get better fuel economy. 2, the chances of me, dying from a car wreck at 65 are slightly better than the chances of me dying from a car wreck at 80. Like, we all know that speed, it makes a big difference. Speed creates kinetic energy. That's how we're having all these troubles. My reaction time is better at 65. And these are the ways that I mitigate risk in my own life. Like, my son's not allowed to play with coins, like random stuff that you learn over time, like, hey, no coins for you, little dude. My son's 2, by the way. He's, that's my best pal in the entire world. Anybody who's met him knows. But, you can mitigate risk in your own home, but essentially most of our job is accidents, and accidents happen. That being said, what I have noticed that affects me more than anything, especially like over time, is like evil. Like true evil. When you see true evil, like when we run calls where people have purposely hurt other people because that's what they wanted to do, not accidents. I don't even lump like gang violence in with that, like 2 guys shooting at each other and one of them hit one. That's evil on evil, or, bad on bad, or whatever you want to call it. Again, I don't lump that in with this. This is people hurting other people just because that's what they wanted to do. In my career, I've only seen it a couple times, but when you see it, I don't know why. Like I said, anybody who's ever talked to me knows I've talked to them about this subject before, but those are the calls that stick with me. People who hurt other people just because they wanted to.
So that's very interesting because, and the reason it's interesting is because you now work in an area that has a high likelihood of you seeing that on a day-to-day shift.
I
Um,
see it quite a bit more now.
yeah, we live in an area, Memphis, the Delta, kind of these areas that you and I have worked in, where we just have a high probability of seeing that. Do you think that that is geography specific because of where we live and the people that we deal with, or do you think that is a larger problem?
Let me understand your question. You're saying that we see it more here in North
Because of where we
Mississippi?
live, yeah. Because
You
of the Memphis climate and everything that we have going on, I think we see it more here,
so
because of our clientele that we see.
so I work in Memphis. I choose to live down here near Senatobia, Mississippi, because the farther away you get from Memphis, the less of that you see. And that's pretty much the case in a big wide circle around Memphis. The farther you push out to Tennessee, farther you push down here to Mississippi, the better things tend to get. I would say that's 100% Memphis in and of itself, because what you get in Memphis is you get people that are doing crime because crime has been non-criminalized there, right? So they can do crime, they can get arrested, they walk back out the next day. There's no consequences for the actions that they have. So they'll do a bunch of crime, they get back out on the street, they go right back to doing crime because they know if they get arrested, they're just going to walk out again. And I would say, you could say, oh, maybe not, but I'm going to touch a subject, and I apologize to anybody who disagrees with me, but you can see the last 2 to 3 weeks of the federal agents being here in Memphis. There's been a huge change just in simple stuff, just in the driving. Like if you've driven on 240 in the last 2 weeks, you're like, oh, this is pleasant. Everyone's going the speed limit. Everybody's car has tags on it. Nobody's going 100. This is phenomenal. And that's low level, like traffic enforcement. You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
to mention that now where I work in Hickory Hill, we're seeing changes on the street just from them pulling criminals off of the street. Criminals are less likely to try to do crime when they think they're going to get caught and prosecuted federally.
Yeah.
I didn't mean
Yeah.
to broach that subject. I'm sure
No. I think that's actually a good subject because, they are making an effort to do something here in Memphis. Whether you agree with it or not, the results speak for themselves for sure.
they do. Anybody on the streets is able to see it. The people that are like, oh, it's not doing anything, they're not out there. They're not on the streets. They're not seeing it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've always highly admired about you, and one of the things that I know your peers have highly admired about you that I've spoken with over time, going, who is that guy? You are and I said it at the start of the show, you are an effective communicator. I've never met anybody that communicated like you. You're always kind, you're always generous, and those are things that I admire about you. And you go into people's houses on their worst days and you communicate that way. And I think that is such a gift. How do you maintain such a level of kindness and grace in the way that you talk, even toward what we believe to be the least of these sometimes?
I really appreciate that. I'll be honest with you. That's it's probably one of the best compliments that I could get, because that is something that I try to do every day. One of the I'd say one of the main things that I try to keep in mind is if somebody was showing up, on an ambulance or a fire truck or in any capacity at all, and they were going to talk to my grandmother, how would I want them to talk to my grandmother? And that's how I try to talk to people. Um, I, you know, the least of us, there's still us. There's still people. They still need stuff from us. Unfortunately, the least of us are sometimes sicker than us, like
Uh-huh.
people with good sleep habits and good diets and stuff like that. They're more sick than us. But I think it's so I'm gonna read you some. I took a picture of this. I saw it the other day on something that somebody presented to us, and it was do 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 do. So I'm gonna butcher this, but the Mariband's 73855 rule on communication. It says that when communicating, 55% of your perceived thoughts are being perceived through body language, 38 are being perceived through tone, and only 7 are actually being perceived through what you say. So, if you're having a conversation with somebody, you're trying to tell them something, only 7% of that is being perceived by the words that are coming out of your mouth. 38 is coming from the tone that you use, and 55 is coming from the body language. And we've all seen it. Take any paramedic. I'll tell you, I used to work with a guy, and we used to say he's the best paramedic in the entire world until 10 o'clock at night. After 10 o'clock at night, he was mad. He was mad at everybody, no matter what your complaint was. He was always mad. 3 a.m., you get called.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, oh, well, I think I'm having a panic attack. And you're like, not really a medical emergency, not really a 911 call. But, if you if you walk in and you got this look on your face and you got your arms crossed, you're like, what'd you call us for? What did you call us for? They're automatically perceiving that you don't want to be there. And in any interaction you have from that exact moment to the end, it's all going to be bad. You're going to be playing catch up the whole time. You're going to be trying to get them back. The people that I precept, I try to teach them the same steps every time. I'm like, come in. Just because dispatch told you that, they have a stubbed toe doesn't mean that's what's wrong with them. All right. So don't assume everybody's lying. You can come to that conclusion later on your own, but come in, kneel down in front of them, get your eyes lower than their eyes, paint a face of concern. All right. I don't care if it's real. I don't care if it's fake, whatever. Paint a face of concern on and ask them what's bothering them today and go from there. They say, oh, well, my toe's hurting real bad. You say, all right, well, let me take a look at it. You look at their toe. And then I'll tell you something that also helps with me is I don't lie to patients. Like, I don't lie to patients. So if I run that proverbial toe pain and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, it looks like you got a hangnail. They're like, is that serious? I'm like, not really. I mean, it can be over time. If you didn't have this treated for 6 months and it got infected, yeah, you could have a real problem. As of right now, it probably just hurts. You could probably get it handled at any clinic. We're already here. If you want me to take you to the hospital for it, I can. That's what they pay me to do. They pay me for 24 hours a day. If I'm sleeping or I'm running calls, I get paid the exact same. If you want to go to the hospital with me, let's go.
That's such a fantastic outlook that I had to work very hard to adopt. I have it as well. And it took some time. And I worked with a guy, and you may know him. His name was Michael Kennedy. And he's been an educator around here for some years, but he would make me, as an EMT, he would make me so incredibly angry because that was his approach at 2 a.m. Just what you just did. Yeah, man, not a big deal. They pay me to take you to the hospital. And of course, I was that paramedic you were referring to. Maybe not in reality, but that's how I felt as an EMT. Like, these mother call me at 2 a.m. for a toe pain. I was just so angry all the time. And he would just be so nice to him, like, come on, let's go to the hospital. Cool deal. Yeah. And I'm like, I cannot stand this guy. But through that, he was teaching me something. And then I became, when I got my paramedic, I was like, I want to be like that. And I kind of adopted that. It was something I had to learn. But it made my EMT partners angry too, which was a little bit of fun as well. I didn't realize how much fun he was having with that.
It's always fun. It's always fun being the nice, compassionate guy, but it's also always fun for me being the nice, compassionate guy to have that angry partner, right? Because when that angry partner, the patient's like, well, what's wrong with him? And I'm like, well, I can tell you what's wrong with him. Okay. What's wrong with him is you called us for something that could have easily been handled at a clinic yesterday. But instead you waited till 3 a.m. You called us. He had to get up out of bed. He's got 2 kids at home. He's very tired. And now he's going to drive us to the hospital. We got to wait on the wall for 2 to 3 hours before he's going to get to go back to bed. That's why he's angry. And they'll be like, oh, well, and I'm like, no, I mean, it's cool. This is what we do. I mean, they pay him to do it, but I mean, they don't pay him to be happy. So it is always kind of fun to have both of those. Luckily, so the partner that I have right now, I won't drop his name either, but the partner that I have right now is like me. He's like, I like the fact that we bitch about patients on the way and we bitch about
Yeah.
patients after, but when we're
Yeah.
there, we're all business. We do the best we can and we try to be nice to everybody. He's like,
Yeah.
he likes that.
No,
That's a,
I love that too. Man, it's funny because one of the things that I used to do as a new paramedic that always drove my partners just absolutely nuts. I don't know if you did this, but even after being an EMT for 7, 8 years before I went to get my paramedic, I did never want to get caught with my pants down.
yeah.
I took everything to the door of the patient's house. So
Mm.
everything went to the door. I pile it on the stretcher, take it out of the door. And there was one partner. Her name's Ashley. She worked with you at Horn Lake Fire. You know who I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that aggravated her so much. I would do it on every single call, whether I was scared of it. It became a joke to me because I wasn't scared of it anymore. I was just doing it to aggravate her. So it is very, very fun to have a partner that's kind of all the time.
Oh, she's the best one too, because she's got that
Yeah.
face where everybody thinks she's mad all the time. She's
And
probably
she's
the
not.
sweetest paramedic on the whole department. She's an
Yeah.
absolute angel. We all love
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, what's
Same.
wrong with her? I'm like, there's nothing wrong with her.
She's the only partner I've ever had that's broken one of my bones with her driving. So she hit the gas too hard and I stuck my hand out to like brace myself and she completely broke. I mean, my pinky finger hit the wall so hard it just completely snapped. And I always mess with her about it when I see her that she's the only partner that's ever done something like that to
I
me.
love
So it's
her.
always a fun little jab that I take at her.
I love
But
her with all my heart.
I've even seen you at the desk of local ERs have a combative patient or a patient that's causing some drama. You know how those patients are. And you just have a way of just calming those people down. I don't know if it's your tone, I don't know if it's your body language, but there's something that you have to be telling yourself in your head to keep your composure. I want to know what that is. I want to know the tips and the tricks to be the Trae Stein communicator expert.
Oh, God, I wish I had tips and tricks for you. I'm going to be honest with you. If you hadn't figured it out already, I just like to talk. Right. And I
Yeah.
love to talk. I love to talk to anybody about anything most of the time. I especially love to explain to patients because patients are always mad about the same couple things. They're mad that it takes so long. They're mad that they're, sitting on the wall. They're mad, that the nurse was mean to them or whatever. And all those are so easy to explain, like you're like, hey, the nurse is mad because she's got too many patients and not enough nurses and she's stuck at this desk and people keep yelling at her. That's why she's mad, And why are we on the wall? Well, I promise you this, if you were having a
Yep.
medical emergency, you
You
wouldn't be
on the wall.
You'd be getting care immediately.
Yep.
So, again, especially with talk about like combative drunks. Those are probably the hardest ones,
Yeah.
because you can't reason with them, and you shouldn't try to reason with them. You just tell them the truth. Like, hey, buddy, you're sitting here because you're not legally allowed to refuse care. And as soon as they check all your stuff and make sure you're safe, you can leave. And I tell patients that all the time. I'm like, look, especially ones that are not drunk, if they're able to leave, I'm like, you're not required to be here. You can stand up and leave at any time. This is not a jail.
Yep.
We are not holding you here against your will. You can
Yep.
stand up and walk out anytime you want. And I'll tell you, of the times that I've said that, almost nobody ever does it. It's kind of like, I imagine it, now that I have a son, now that I have a toddler who's 2 years old, I realize the communication skills that I use for patients is almost exactly the same. It's like, hey, you know what? You can do that if you want to, but that's going to be the end of it. Like if you throw that, you're not going to have it anymore. If you walk out, you won't be getting medical care at all. And, so like giving people the option and letting them choose the better of two options is very valuable, I think.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I talked to a psych guy for about an hour one time. Picked a guy up, homeless gentleman, not taking his meds. He was having some difficulty breathing. The difficulty breathing.
The difficulty breathing. Yeah.
And I talked to him for about an hour one time, and we went through everything. He was like, so how do you know it's not my heart? I was like, well, I don't know it's not your heart, but I have a strong suspicion that it's not your heart. This is your 12 lead EKG. And he went all the way. He was like, who services these machines? I was like, these machines are serviced. They're serviced every night at 3 a.m. automatically by the company that sold them to us online. So they do a self-check every night. And then I check it off when I get here in the morning to make sure all the buttons work. He's like, well, who fixes it if it's broken? I'm like, well, if it's a exterior thing that our EMS lieutenant fixes it, if it's an interior thing, we trade this one in for a loaner, and then the company that sold it to us fixes them. Because the monitor is worth more than I get paid a year. So we don't work on them.
Yes.
I'm not a trained life
Yes.
pack technician, unfortunately.
That's right.
And probably like an hour of that. We got all the way down to he was like, well, what are your protocols for this? And I was like, well, these are my protocols for this. These are what I did. This is exactly the steps that I took, and, making sure that you're not having a life-threatening illness. And he was like, he finally exhausted himself. He just talked himself out, and he's like, oh, okay, all right. I was like, all right, cool. That took an hour though, because I had the time. I'm sitting at Baptist East on the wall with a non-life-threatening patient. So that was at like 3 a.m.
And you had somebody to conversate with, so you were just as content talking to him.
Some other random medic walked up and fist bumped me. He was like, man, you got to be like the chillest dude I've ever seen in my life. I said, oh. Well, it's either I deal with him or the nurses have to deal with him. If the nurses deal with him, they're going to deal with him for 60 seconds, and then they're going to call the cops. And then he's going to be right back in the system. He's going to go, it's going to be a circular problem. He's going to get arrested. He's going to go to jail. He's going to be right back on the street tomorrow. We're going to be seeing him again.
That's right. That's how the whole circle of life works in EMS, right?
It does.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand that. I'm like, no, we see the same patients. It's like 80% of the same patients on a loop. And then, if you run 10 calls a day, you've seen 8 of them before. There's only 2 new ones. You're like, oh, who are you? It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So you actually had some success on social media. I told you I was going to talk about this, and you're going to roll your eyes.
Yeah.
So you had a TikTok account that kind of blew up there for a little bit, called the Boo Boo Bus Driver, and it grew really quick. And then you kind of stepped away. Tell us about that. Tell us about why that became kind of a toxic thing for you.
So that was an accident. I had a TikTok page. I made stupid little videos. I never expected anybody to see them. I posted a video one time of me and my partner driving in the ambulance down Goodman Road. And it was me in the passenger seat, my partner driving. I don't know if you know that guy or not, but I had to tell him before I started video. I was like, hey, I'm videoing, don't cuss, So we're driving, and it was abysmal. You know what I mean? Nobody pulls over. When they do pull over, they pull off left and right. They stop in the middle of the street. We come up to the stoplight at Bullfrog Corner, and nobody stops. They just keep piling through, whatever. And I posted that random, I don't remember what I was doing, but I just posted. I was like, oh yeah, this is what it looks like, whatever. And I can't remember how many it did, but it did like 1 million views or something like that. And I was like,
it was way high.
And in my head, I was like, hey, this is a good opportunity to, educate the masses. Cause I've noticed a big problem that we have down here is, if you talk to people from other parts of the country, they still have driver's ed, and they still have people teach them to drive. A problem that we have down here is, single parent homes. I think we have a big problem of that down here, especially in Memphis, single parent homes. And if you talk to folks up there, their license, when they went to get their license, they got their license and then they went to the dealership and bought a car, and nobody taught them how to drive it. They never driven a car before, I learned how to drive on a farm, I was driving farm trucks when I was 7, I knew how driving worked. And then I did driver's ed when I was in high school, and I remember all that stuff, and that's how I did it. But I was in my head, I was like, hey, this is a great opportunity for me to explain to people what you're supposed to do. So I would video, and when people would do the wrong things, we want you, hey, what we want you to do is pull over to the right and stop. As soon as you've stopped, I don't have to worry about where you're going to drive from there on out. So if you just pull over and to the right and you stop, I can say, okay, cool, that one stopped. Then I go on to the next one. The next one stops. Then I don't have to worry about it. So I did a couple of those videos. They did really good. I would get a bunch of comments on there. And my favorite comment that I would get, because I got it all the time, was, you could tell this is somewhere in California because everybody in the South always pulls over. And I'd be like, this is in the South. All right. This is Southern South.
Yeah.
I was like, it may be like that at your little hometown, but here in the Great Horn Lake, people don't know what to do. And it was overwhelming support. People like, oh, I can't believe they did this to you. Oh, I can't believe this is how this went. And you'd get 1 out of every 100 or so comments that would be something dumb, oh, I don't know why you guys are always driving on the road for not real emergencies. And be like, well, I mean, that's a fair point. Horn Lake does not have a tiered response system. So gunshots get the same response as, stub toes. It's one of the things I do like about Memphis is they have a tiered response system. So they have locution or whatever, so it's all computerized. So if it deems it a alpha or an omega, that means you can drive over there like a regular person in a regular car. You don't have to use your sirens or anything like that. So I understand what they're saying, but you get some like shitty comments. And something I noticed, because like as you saw when I tried to use this computer program here, it took me like 15 minutes because I'm terrible at any kind of technology. So I didn't really know much about the internet, but as I went on a little farther, I had a video where it was that, I don't remember if anybody remembers, but it was that prompt that came out. It was like, what's something you've learned from your job that most people wouldn't? And the answer that I had, because I used to have that video up, was what I learned from my job is that I used to think that hoarders were like a rare, like a wheat penny in a giant, jar of coal. And I'm here to tell you they're not. All right. Like any given neighborhood, there's several of them on each street. Like there's just huge hoarder houses. There's a difference between poor and dirty. All right, because I've been in poor houses that were immaculate, and I've been in poor houses that were dirty, and I've been in wealthy homes that were immaculate, and I've been in wealthy homes that were disgusting. Like there's a difference between there's no correlation between money and cleanliness. And I just was like, hey, hoarder homes are a real thing. They're everywhere. They're all over the place. There are way more of them than you think. And I had I obviously interact with comments, like I like to hear what people comment. And I had a person on there that was like, this is, like, you don't know what people are struggling with, their mental health and this, that, and the other.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, first off, you brought up mental health. I didn't bring up any mental health. I don't, I don't judge anybody that's living that way because of a mental health problem. I judge people that are living that way because they're dirty and disgusting. Like I'm not saying, hey, these filthy mental health people are bad. I don't like that. I love it. That's what sucks about the internet, is because like that person doesn't know who I am. Probably one of the more compassionate people they'll ever talk to. I'm extremely compassionate to everybody and all of their, woes and ails and whatnot. But yeah, I ended up having that conversation. It went back and forth like 20, 30 times. And, I finally was just like, whatever, whatever. Anyway, I have a feeling it was that person, but somebody contacted my department and was like, hey, one of your paramedics has a post up about, people's hoarder homes and whatnot. And I ended up having to go sit in the room with my chief, and my chief was like, hey, like you can't, this paints the department in a bad light. It seems like we're coming into people's houses and judging them. And I was like, I mean, not really, but if you say so, I'll take it down. I don't have any problem. I also have a nice caption above my page that was like, my views and anything discussed, is not the views of my department or whatever. But I was like, okay, I'll take it down. It's no big deal. And then there was another instance after that. I had another video where I got into a heated discussion with what I realize now was an internet troll, somebody that just comments to keep you commenting so that so that it gets more and more whatever. And that one went back and forth about 50 times before I was finally like, all right, there's no winning this argument. This is not an argument. This is just me arguing with a computer screen. And, but I remember, so that argument that I had, it like affected me for like a whole day. I was like mad. I was just angry, just walking around angry. I'm at the gym angry. I'm at home angry. My girlfriend, now wife, was like, hey, what's wrong with you? And I was like, this stupid person on the internet is making me mad. She was like, you should probably just let that go. And I was like, that would be nice if I could let that go. That'd be super cool. But after that, I was like, after having to talk with my chief and, having somebody, I was like, is that what we're going to do? We're going to let random, people from the internet call into the department and control what we do on our social media pages? Is that what we're going to do? So after that, I was like, I don't think this is for me. I quit posting videos for a while. When I do post videos, they get seen by 500 people, which is great. I'm like, this is exactly what I want. I want 500 people to randomly see my stuff and this. And I stay away from all the, Memphis has a much more clear cut social media policy than Horn Lake ever did. So I just steer clear of it, stay off of it. It's probably better for my mental health anyway.
No doubt. No doubt. We've been very lucky not to have any real trolls. And I mean, I've said it before, but I never started this podcast to get famous. That's not the basis of it. I just enjoy doing it. And I think it sheds light on something important. So our videos are seen by 700,000 people usually, and we don't get the trolls, but I've asked numerous of the large creators that I've interviewed, especially the women, how they deal with trolls, and you would be so shocked at some of the stuff they get.
Yeah.
Like Paramedic Sophie, Flight Nurse Shay, like all those women who represent women in EMS very well on the internet. Man, they get some trashy, trashy comments.
Yeah.
Trashy.
Yeah.
Wherever your mind's going, they absolutely can fill that blank of yeah, that's happened.
Dude, it's a
Even to
nightmare.
it's a nightmare. So, and I always ask them how they deal with it, and most of them just block and move on, and a few of them have gotten down the rabbit hole that you went down of like trying to perpetrate an argument with them, and it never works. You always have to just let it go. So, kudos to you for being able to recognize like this is not good. I don't want to do this.
Well, I never did get to cash out my $20 that I made from TikTok, so just
20
leave that.
bucks.
20 whole.
Wow. Hey, it's more than me. I mean,
do. I remember I had like 2 videos in like 1 month that hit like 1 million,
yeah,
and I was like, "Oh my god, maybe I could be rich from this." And then like the next month I was like, "Nah, I don't want to be rich from this at all."
no,
But
I don't either.
I will say just all of the people that you've had on your show, I love all of them. It's baffling to me that I get to be on the same show as even half of the people that you've had on here. I mean,
Dude, I am getting to literally live a dream to be able to talk to some of these folks.
I know,
Like
dude,
it has been so much fun.
all those
And
people are awesome.
and to have Shade Tree Cardiology randomly text me once a week and go, "Hey, dude, what's up?" Like we're buddies, and I guess
Cool.
we are now. But that's just wild to me. Like
Dude,
just to have,
I've been following his stuff for years.
yeah.
Oh, dude, it's crazy to me
And
to
he's
be on the same podcast as those
and
guys.
for a long time, I was like, "Hey, Shade Tree Cardiology," like that's how I would respond, like his
Yeah.
what I think of as his appropriate name.
Right.
And he's like, "Just call me by my first name." And I'm like, okay, Greg. Great to hear from you.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah. And he does. He reaches out to us. Sophie talks to us. I mean, it's just wild to see some of these people that they're just like you and I. Like, there's no difference in them. They're just like you and I.
Yeah.
Greg, Shade Tree Cardiology, put it best. He was like, "I'm just a celebrity with a little C. I'm the same dude I was running ambulance calls." He said, "I still run ambulance calls." He said, he said, "I showed up at patients' houses and they're like, 'Aren't you on TikTok?' And he's like, 'Yeah, sort of.'"
As a matter of fact, I am.
I'm like, "Sort of.
Sort of.
Million followers or something." He's just sort of. But I mean, all of them have been just so down to earth. So I'm getting to live a dream too. One of the things I wanted to start to kind of wind down with is your family. You have a beautiful family. You have a wife who is phenomenal. She ate dinner with us the day we went and met to talk about how this was all going to go.
Yeah.
And she's awesome. She is so cool. So love your wife, but you're a father. You got a 2-year-old you mentioned. You got a baby on the way, right?
I do.
All right. When are we expecting now?
February.
February. Oh, we're getting close.
We're getting close every day.
We're getting close. And one of the things that I learned in my career is that when we have kids, it kind of changes the way we look at patients, especially pediatric patients.
Golly.
You start to personalize some of those patients and see your children while they're laying there hurting or dying or whatever's happening. So how does having a wife, your current child, and soon newborn kind of force you to shift some of your coping mechanisms to realize that there is a difference now that you're a father?
Well, I'll say it's a double-edged sword. One, before I had kids, I was the same as every other provider. Just, pediatrics are a little scary. But now that I've had a child and I've raised one up 2 years, like every time I pass a new milestone, I feel like I just bank more knowledge on children. I used to be scared of kids. Now I'm like, first one through the door. I get the kid. I'm like, hey, I got him. Like I love kids. They're the absolute best part of everything we do. It's way easier to deal with pediatrics once you've had a child, once you've raised one, at home, the things that are normal, the things that are abnormal. It's funny to me that now that I have one, it's way easier for me to see sick kids for being sick. I'm like, cause like the whole time I was like, I don't know, is that normal? Are they supposed to breathe like that all the time? Who knows? But now that I have one, I'm like, that kid is sick. That kid definitely is sick. Let's get this handled, you know? So there's
Yeah.
that. Um, as far as coping mechanisms go, I think I figured out nice and early in my career. Well, one, my sweet, beautiful wife, who everybody doesn't know, she's also a paramedic. She's a stay-at-home mom now, so she was a paramedic riding the ambulance for 2 or 3 years there. She's way cooler than I'll ever be, way smarter too, but I'll go out and make the money, I guess. So, but she, when we were still dating before we got married, she was in school and I was a paramedic, and I was still on that like paramedic schedule where I would, come home, I'd drink a bunch of whiskey, I'd play video games till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I'd wake up at 6 and go to work. And she was in school and she was like, "Hey, that doesn't work for me. Let's stop doing that." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, what do you?" And she's like, "Let's go to bed at like 10." And I was like, 10? What are you gonna do? You're gonna sleep all night? It's crazy. And so she got me started on that trend a long time ago. So I prioritize sleep like really, really heavily in my life. It used to be easier before we had kids, but it's, I still try to get in bed. Like if it's 10:15 and I'm looking at I'm like, "Whoa, we messed up. We're 15 minutes late to bed. We've made a terrible mistake." But I would say sleep has probably been a really big one. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I quit drinking. I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis earlier this year, so I quit drinking for that. But I also like been kind of I've been trending down on drinking for years. To where I was drinking like maybe once or twice a week, and I would have like one or two maybe. So like it wasn't that big a deal getting rid of it. I haven't missed it a single time since I quit drinking. So not drinking, sleeping good. I've noticed that as far as like irritability, like being mad or like being upset or whatnot, very rarely does it have anything to do with the types of calls I'm running. It generally has to do with how much sleep I got. I don't find myself to be more irritable when I run bad calls. I do find myself to be a lot more irritable when I haven't slept the whole night.
And it's funny that you say that because the episode that will come out just before this one, so last week's episode when this airs, um, we interviewed a health and wellness coach that's also a paramedic and a first responder firefighter, kind of like yourself.
It's gotta be
And
hard.
that was the one thing that he gave as a tip. He said, if you do nothing else, prioritize sleep.
Sleep.
He said, it'll change everything. He said, just
Prioritize
prioritize
sleep.
sleep.
I do my best. I do my best to avoid daytime sleep whenever possible. Of course, if I work all day and then I work all night and I have to take a nap, something I tell to the rookies, I'm like, don't go home and sleep all day. Whatever you do, I'm like, go home and sleep for 3-4 hours tops. Wake up at noon, live the rest of your day, go back to bed at 8. But if you sleep all day, then your sleep schedule's ruined till the end of the set. You'll know you're not going to get it back. Um, I try to prioritize exercise. I struggle, just like every other parent, trying to find the time. I live all the way down here, so I got to wake up at like 4:30ish to get to work on time. And then when I come home, I'm not getting home till 8:30 or so. So trying to find time to exercise is difficult, especially Memphis is really high volume. So it's tough to find time to exercise at work as well. As far as, coping mechanisms with bad calls and stuff like that, the only thing I've noticed is if I run major pediatric calls, like anything to do with children where, God forbid, a child dies or a child gets injured or something like that, my first instinct is I really want to get off of that call and I really want to, call and or FaceTime my son and talk to him and just tell him that I love him, make sure he's good. There is a big benefit to having my wife stay home with him. I worry a lot less. You know what I mean? So,
Sure.
anybody
Sure.
who's looking at, both parents are working and they got to put their child in daycare, they got to stay with their grandmother and stuff like that. I would imagine that is a next level of concern. Like
There is some, yeah,
probably just worried a lot
absolutely.
more often. Like I don't worry near as much just because I know that he's in good hands. I know
Yeah.
that he's, well taken care of. I know that he's being focused on, one-on-one almost every day. So that helps a lot.
And by somebody you implicitly trust
Yeah.
without any question at all.
Oh yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's a huge
I
difference.
I guess the thing that I struggle with the most, and you may or may not relate to this, but and it's in the thing that I sent you, but one of the things that I learned I had to do after having children was I had to decompress before I walked in the door. Because I found myself not being a good dad if I walked in with all that stuff still weighing on me. So I had to
Yeah.
find something that I was like, I could just take a breath and walk in and be dad and leave the paramedic Kevin outside the door. And it took me a long time to separate that identity crisis because my identity was Kevin the paramedic. It wasn't Kevin anything else. It was just the paramedic. That's all I ever wanted to be. Once I got it, that's all I thought about. That's all I was. And it took
Right.
some time and some mistakes and a lot of errors to go, you're somebody else too. Like you're Kevin, the guy who loves to do this kind of thing and
Right.
podcast, or you're the guy who is a dad and a husband and a Christian and all those things that we wear those hats for. So
Yeah.
that identity crisis is huge.
The paramedic profession in and of itself, the fire profession, paramedic, whatever it is you do in our profession, does have a really bad tendency to be overwhelming. It does have a tendency to kind of consume because there's, like if you took classes every day you went to work, you could probably still be doing classes a year from now and still be learning stuff, and even the guys that have been doing this 20, 30 years, they'll tell you, they're like, I still learn stuff every day. There's no end, there's no end to the amount of knowledge you get in this business. And you see people that a lot of folks do, they make this their entire lives, they make it their whole identities. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that if that's what you want to do and that's what you want to be and you can manage it, and that's fine. It's not what I want to do. Like I
Mm.
want to I want it to be my job as long as I'm there getting paid for it. But when I come home, I'm not paramedic Trae when I come home.
No, I'm out.
Luckily for me, I have an hour commute, so I get to wind up for
You get,
work on my way to work, and then I get to wind down on the way down. I'll tell you something else that helps me a lot is I got into listening to audiobooks a couple years ago, and
yeah, I do that too.
real quick for any of the ADHD people out there that are struggling with, everyday tasks, Audible. Get on Audible. It's like $15 a month or something like that. You don't even have to listen to new books. Half the time, I'm listening to old books from when I was a teenager. I've listened to the Harry Potter series probably 50 times. And it's a mundane in the background that I've read before. I know how it ends, and I'll listen to that, and I'll put a new book on, like I listen to 3 books. I listen to a new book. I usually listen to something that's nonfiction, and then I listen to something old that I know how it ends. And I'll listen to those in the car. I listen to those at night when I'm trying to fall asleep. For anybody who struggles, because I, for the longest time, couldn't fall asleep. That was a big struggle I had. I stayed up late because I didn't fall asleep well. Step 1, stop drinking caffeine at noon every day. Switch to water or whatever it is that you want to drink. And then instead of a TV, I used to do a TV. And then after I did a TV, I found the Audible. I just put the Audible with a 30-minute timer right next to my pillow. I close my eyes in the dark. I listen to it. I fall asleep in about 3 minutes. That was the game changer for me. But yeah, I get to wind down. I wind down with like old books that I've listened to before that are not they don't engage enough of my mind that I have to think about them. They just engage enough of my mind that it keeps me from thinking about other things.
Yeah.
And I don't do that ADHD spiral, or I think and think and think and think, and I wind myself up and all that.
I think year to date I've listened to 17 or 18 books now.
Yeah.
And not sponsored, although we would take it if it came. Spotify has the same feature. You have like 10 hours of listening with your normal monthly subscription.
Yeah.
I have listened to a number of books through Spotify and only paid $6 or $7 extra when I reach my time limit. I'm still wanting to listen. You can pay the extra fee, but that comes with your Spotify subscription. If you're listening on Spotify, that's a perk you probably didn't know you had that's there.
Yeah.
So
it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Podcasts, I love, like anything. I used to listen to music all the time, and now I listen to music like for a specific reason. Like when I want to listen to music, when I want to hear music, I'll put on music. But if I'm cleaning the house,
I was the same way.
audiobook,
Now it's
listening
podcast or audiobook.
listening to Harry
100%.
Potter.
That's good. Well, Trae, you are a very interesting guest. I have enjoyed this a good bit.
Awesome. Man.
I
I
really
enjoyed
always enjoy talking to you.
I always love to get a chance to watch myself in a little screen and talk for an hour straight.
If I thought that was a lie, I would laugh at that, but I think that's probably the truth. So give us one. If you want listeners to hear one thing you said tell us the groundbreaking information that you have for us. Tell us the slogan that you want to end it with, or something you want our listeners to know. It's hard, right? Or give us some words of wisdom from Trae Stein.
I would say another one of the reasons that I try to communicate with everybody so well and treat everybody like they're sick until they're not. I'm going to bore you with one last story, then I'm going to leave. I went and picked a lady up one time, 3 a.m. in the morning, with nausea vomiting. She'd been nausea vomiting for 7 days. She's like, I've been sick for 7 days. And I was like, oh, I was 3 a.m. in the morning. I was being that cranky paramedic that I was being an asshole.
Yeah.
I was. And I was like, oh, you've been sick for 7 days. Oh, okay, sure. 7 days. Me and my partner, we stood her up. We walked her out to the ambulance. She was leaned over, dry heaving. She's, sat her down. I started a line. I gave her like 8 Zofran. I was like, you're never going to be nauseous again. And brought her to the hospital. And she was, same thing. Just, I'm just so sick. I'm so nauseous, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And I treated her bad. And I know I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything bad, but I wasn't nice to her. You know what I mean? I wasn't nice about it at all. I was mad. I didn't want to be awake. I dropped her off to the nurse. I gave her a scathing review. I was like, this lady's nausea vomiting times 7 days or whatever. And it turned out that it wasn't nausea vomiting, for no reason or whatever. She had a cerebellar stroke 7 days ago, and her cerebellum was completely dead. So she was never going to have any balance. She was going to have nausea vomiting until they did some sort of surgical intervention, I'm assuming. And I think about that was probably 6 years ago, probably. And I think about that every time I start to try to be an asshole to people. I'm like, just because you don't know what's wrong with them doesn't mean that there's nothing wrong with them. I was like, we can hazard a guess. We can say there's probably nothing wrong with them, but just because you don't think there's something wrong with them doesn't give you the right to be a jerk to them. They called you, they wanted you here, they're asking for your help them with a smile. And then after you leave, you and your partner can yell about it.
That's good advice, and that's a good story to live by. I used to tell paramedic students that I would orientate, like, you can be the worst clinical paramedic around, but if you treated somebody nice, they're going to remember that.
Nice
They're
doctors do
going
not
to
get
remember
sued.
that. Mm-hmm.
Nice doctors
They're
don't
going-
get sued. Somebody told
You're
me
right.
that too.
And that's accurate. I believe that. Well, Trae, thank you for joining us. We are excited to be here. We're excited to be doing this every week. We have a good time. We enjoy our guests, like you've heard me talk about. And as always, if you guys want to follow us and watch our stuff, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, we have a website, asilentwarwithin.com, where you can reach any of the hosts here, and we put our guests up there, and any of their social media or anything that they give us to put out. So you can always find that there, and you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Trae, thanks again for joining us. We had a good time. I appreciate it, buddy. And as always, be safe, take care of your mind, and we will talk soon.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.